I
Yeah.
wonder, in terms of your journey and the sort of work that you're seeing being done out there in the community, what does the very best look like? I mean, an example just to perhaps guide this a little bit more is in the development of cultural competency and I would say conscious inclusion initially based programs from the beginning of an person's life cycle through their employment, all the way through to their development, all the way through to selection of what makes a good manager or leader, being based upon humanistic qualities and values. And I'm going to put it firmly in the square of as well anti-racist campaigners who are good leaders and managers and good technically at their jobs, but they fight the fight every day when they go to work. They might not call it I am a campaigner. They might be an ally or a champion. Are we seeing enough emphasis on these qualities in leadership development and training and selection? I mean, I'm not seeing it so much in selection, but maybe some of the early signs we're getting there with people development and training.
I really would like to be positive, Mark, but I am struggling because I
Mm,
see a lot of, I call it optical illusion activities.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
companies, they're doing lots of activities, but when you ask them what impact is it having, they're not measuring it, they haven't thought about
Mm,
it. And when you ask, okay, then how are you measuring? How are you talking to the people, that engagement with the people that
mm,
it affects? They're not
mm,
doing it,
mm,
or it isn't psychologically safe for these marginalized internal communities to share their experience. And
mm,
if you're focusing, number one, there's a lot of focus on, continues to be a focus on diversity. Well, I was subject of diversity, let's get more black people in, but the
mm,
environment wasn't set up for us. So for
mm,
me, it's a gardening analogy. You like your garden, you go to the garden centre, you see some plants. I think you read the labels, you make sure you've got the soil is right.
mm,
You'll weed, you'll prepare the ground. That's not what happens with people. That's not what happens
mm,
with diverse people. It's, oh, we'll pick one of them and we'll throw them in, and hey ho, if they survive, fine, and if they don't, we'll just get some more.
mm.
That's
It's a
what we do with people.
commoditization, isn't it? And
Yeah.
you talked about what I'd interpreted as virtue signaling. And for anyone who is back to that question of, do you know yourself and any organizations, that replies also to organizational self-awareness, doesn't it? In terms of who are we as leaders and what do we stand for and what type of organization do we create with that? Are we virtue signaling? And so the absence of, and I love that garden analogy, the soil check, the environmental check, the cultural competency, and not just a bit of training, actually assessed cultural competency within an organization. You mentioned psychological safety, that being assessed and measured. What else would be analogous in the environmental context, the training environment within an organization and the culture setting? It's not all just about training. Obviously, there's policy and there's leadership. And I wonder what else is analogous to setting the soil right and making sure that the sunlight's right for that plant rather than just chucking it in the garden and hoping for the best and replacing it if it doesn't work.
Mm. A few things. Number one, we performance measure and manage a variety of competencies. Why aren't we doing those relating to EDI?
Mm,
It needs to be in there. And depending on your role in the organization, then it needs to be graded accordingly. And so
mm,
the behaviors need to be exhibited, and it needs to be measured right from the outset, right through from the beginning of the recruitment and selection cycle.
mm,
That's the first thing. The second thing is we have a tendency, and I say we because I think it's a global problem issue,
mm,
recruit people that are technically competent who aren't competent to manage people. And that's why we select them for promotion. We
mm,
select them because they're technically competent. We don't test them whether they're capable of
mm,
managing and developing people. And
mm,
some people just simply aren't. And they're dangerous, and we shouldn't give them people to break.
mm,
Leave them with a computer or a car or whatever it is. Do not give them people.